Hey, look, Zach Osterman here, IU Insider, Indianapolis Star. This is Mind Your Banners for December 2nd, 2025. A snowy Mind Your Banners, Mike. I think we got about 3.5 inches down here in Bloomington. I don't know how you fared up your way, but we were joking about this before we hit record, before we went live. Possibly the biggest Mind Your Banners ever, at least until Saturday night. Because we are going to be discussing in depth and in length Indiana versus Ohio State, the first 1 versus 2 matchup in 19 years in the Big Ten, Indiana's first appearance in the Big Ten championship game, and I think it's fair to say the most anticipated game of the college football season thus far. Have I stated anything incorrectly yet? I mean, I kind of made up that snow total. That might be it. Like I just kind of eyeballed it on my back deck. I eyeballed it while I was shoveling the driveway this morning. It was enough to get school banged out for the day. That's,
But I don't feel like it doesn't take much these days to.
No, I think since COVID, because we have the whole e-learning apparatus, we just don't mess with it anymore.
Like but the e-learning now is just like, here's work you can do at home. It's not a virtual.
My son built a fort.
That was his e-learning?
That was one of his assignments.
There you go. Did he succeed?
I mean, the picture certainly, it looks sturdy. It kind of depends on what exactly. Like if Santa Ana and the Mexican Army showed up outside, I'm not sure it would hold up. But it looked like it was going to be able to do a job, certainly against the snow, given that it was in the living room. So
sure.
That's all I got.
All right.
I want your initial thoughts. We have like just your sort of first blush impressions. We've talked about this game, the potential for this game for so long. I think we probably wondered which of Oregon or Indiana, because neither one played Ohio State in the regular season, was better, and therefore, the wider college football world wanted to see play Ohio State in this game more. And then, of course, we got that question answered in early October when Indiana went to Oregon and won 30-20. And I think it is fair to say since then, it has felt in so many different ways, the quarterback conversation, the conversation about the defense, the sort of juxtaposition of these two programs culturally and historically against one another, even the game last season in Columbus, like Indiana and Ohio State have been on a collision course, and we are finally going to get that on Saturday night at Lucas Oil Stadium.
So what was the question?
What are your initial thoughts? What first fills your mind when I tell you Indiana, Ohio State, Big Ten championship?
You know what's funny? Because you rambled a bit there. I was going through the transcripts yesterday, and you were on like a heater with your length of questions. Did you see the chunk of your Signetti question was like longer than most of his answers yesterday?
To be fair, the chunk of most questions is longer than a lot of his answers.
True, but yours was very long. And you did the same thing with Mendoza, and Mendoza only had 10 minutes, and it was like he was answering long too. So it was like you got to just be like, "How are you doing?" and let him go. You got to trim those down for when the CFP does.
I'll make sure that the next question I ask in a press conference is, "How you doing?"
Perfect.
Just for you.
How you doing? First thought, it. I think that this is the matchup. I mean, once we hit midseason, once Indiana beat Oregon, this was it. This was the matchup, right? And I think that, you kind of were like, did somebody get tripped up? Does somebody, have a disappointing outing? Indiana made it through, and then Michigan was sort of the last hurdle there for either team. And, I just think this is what everybody wanted to see, because obviously, I think last year, especially the way Signetti's talked about it this week, that they didn't meet the moment at the time. And so I think this is kind of what they were looking to get. This is the measuring stick, even though I think they've had tests, and certainly worthy tests on the road. I think 3 of them really, Indiana speaking, and met them. I think that there was always going to be in the back of their head that they needed to get past this team, whether it was in the playoffs or the Big Ten championship. And so I think this is it. I can certainly see these two teams actually facing off again. It's certainly plausible. But for now, obviously, this is huge. And just the juxtaposition between a team that is probably the most decorated in the Big Ten, or arguably, right up there, versus one of the least decorated team in the Big Ten, arguably down there. And so it just that juxtaposition, I think, makes for the kind of perfect kind of matchup when you're looking for storylines and you're looking for history and all of that.
Yeah, I think. I mean, there's a lot of different directions I would pull that. I think, first of all, I think the city of Indianapolis has to be salivating at this, right? Because Ohio State is always going to turn out for this game.
Well, and just to show you, last year, I just because it was so cheap, I was like, let's take the kids. I think we got in for like $16 a ticket.
Yeah. And like it was, and like the attendance last year was better than I think they maybe expected. And
but
still
you could get in. The get-in price was less than $20 a ticket.
Yeah.
Now it's $400 a ticket.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen like $2,000 a ticket.
I'm saying like the minimum price of get in. It's huge. Yeah, just to show you kind of the difference from last year. But go on.
I think that the other. It feels like the other reason that I have wanted to see this game, and I think maybe I have been guilty at times of understating the extent to which Ohio State has been tested. Like if you look at the FPI, for example, Oregon is 4th in the FPI, so obviously Indiana has the better win. Indiana arguably has the better win, full stop. But at the same time, like they both played Penn State. Obviously, Penn State played in Columbus. Indiana played Penn State in State College, so Indiana maybe gets a little more credit there. Indiana wins at Iowa, but it's worth pointing out Iowa is one spot behind Michigan, which Ohio State dealt with pretty comfortably in Ann Arbor this weekend.
And that was a weather game.
What's up?
In Michigan, it was a weather game.
Yeah, well, and listen, I mean, they probably caught Michigan. Like Michigan's best football was probably late October, early November. But again, like you can only play the schedule when you play it. And let's be fair, if we're going to use the FPI as a guide, Ohio State also went to Washington and beat Washington pretty comfortably. Washington's 22 in the FPI. So I think you can be guilty of kind of holding Ohio State to account for the Big Ten schedule that it got a little bit too much. But certainly we have not seen Ohio State play a team like this, whereas we have seen Indiana play a team like this. And I think that was one of the reasons.
What is it? But so Texas doesn't count because they fell back. But and I'm not saying.
No, I think Texas doesn't count because even if you are allowing for what Texas has become, and they are 13 in the FPI, it's pretty clear that's not what they were when Ohio State played them. Okay, now, Ohio State probably wasn't a fully formed team either, but
yeah. No, I'm just curious, just asking, because Cignetti has caught himself multiple times. He's like, they haven't been challenged at all, and then he's like, well, they did beat Texas only by a touchdown. I just thought that's because you're doing the same thing. Like, well, Texas is not there, but continue.
I think I would be interested to see that game today as opposed to week one. Like Arch Manning clearly wasn't ready, etc. The other thing that I have, and I've thought this for a while because there's been so much discussion of conference championship games in the playoff sort of era, and do teams even want to be playing in them, and should they get penalized by the committee if they lose them, and what if they lose them a certain way? The other thing I'm kind of curious about is, like, will we get a better game Saturday night? Because neither of these teams has that much to lose. The Rose Bowl would probably mean more for Indiana. Not that it wouldn't mean something for Ohio State. Ohio State.
It's not just they don't have something to lose. There is something to be gained.
Sure. No.
I think people have sort of minimized, like, top seed. You don't have to worry about being dropped off. I mean, I think both teams have guaranteed a top spot in the top.
I think so, too.
But why not take it out of the committee's hands? Because who knows what happens when, I think it's 12 people now get in a room and they decide, right? Like, who knows? And, and I think there's even a path that they have that they could both still just keep their rankings, basically, or if Indiana wins, they go to 1 and Ohio State goes to 2. So I do think that that's been undersold. Like, I don't think the top seed is nothing. And to prevent you from guaranteeing a spot, even though I think Indiana, win or lose, has done enough to keep the bye no matter what. It's just about Ohio State's resume. They might actually be the one that needs it a little more because their resume isn't as great.
It just feels like maybe we're looking at, like, is Alabama in trouble if they lose the SEC championship game? where, is the ACC even going to get a team into the playoff? Does the ACC deserve a team in the playoff? This is like the sort of this is the one matchup of the major conferences. I guess the Big 12 with BYU as well. But this is the matchup of the major conferences for, not BYU, Texas Tech, because I think Texas Tech could lose that game and still make the playoff. But this is the one that I look at, and it's the most sort of like, hey, just turn it loose. And, play your best. You don't need to play tight. You don't need to play. You don't need to be,
don't sort of. We're not like saving, because somebody's like, would you save the playbook? And I don't think you need. It's the idealized version of what the conference championships should be in the playoff era, where you have the best teams playing and they're locks for the playoffs. So don't have to worry about it hurting them. And I think that's kind of the quick way to say it is like, look, they have something to play for beyond just, and like you said, I think the Rose Bowl means something. I think a Big Ten title means a great deal to Indiana. It would be Big Ten title. But I also think there's something to play for beyond that within the college football player structure and very little penalty. And that's sort of, I think, what you want. And they're trying to tweak the rules to make sure, like, all the games, I don't think you're ever going to get there. But, like, this is the one, right, that I think you have the all upside and no downside for these teams.
When was the last time Ohio State last won it in 2020? Is that right?
It's been a minute.
Yeah, because Michigan, Oregon won it last year. Michigan won the two before that. Maybe they won it in 21. I can't remember. But the point is, like, even Ohio State, Ryan Day was talking about this on Sunday, that their free goals are like the Michigan game, the Big Ten championship game, and then the national title. It's been a minute since Ohio State won this game. Like, you even maybe have to remember that. Like, that I know that we tend to treat the Big Ten championship as kind of Ohio State's birthright, like, historically. But
Ohio State won 2020, but they won from 2017 to 2020. So
yeah, but this group hasn't. That's kind of the point. Like, this group has not won a Big Ten championship, at least not really as currently constituted. There's going to be, and I don't think we can avoid it, a lot of discussion of the quarterback battle of Fernando Mendoza was very complimentary of Julian Sayin. He kind of came with some receipts, talking about Sayin's completion. He said, like, one of the things any quarterback prides himself on most is completion percentage and efficiency. And, basically he all but said nobody in the country is better at that than Julian Sayin, which I think is true. Sayin is the best completion percentage in the country. I think for one of the things that makes, to me, this matchup compelling is that for so long, we've had this conversation, even if we want to separate the Heisman of it all for a second, because we've talked a lot about Fernando Mendoza and the Heisman, but just the conversation about who's the best quarterback in the Big Ten. And I think it's fair to say it's clearly one of these two. With respect to Jaden Maiava and Dante Moore, it's clearly one of Fernando Mendoza or Julian Sayin. Sayin has been remarkably efficient. Mendoza's been a little bit more productive, primarily because he can also do things with his legs. I think he's got 6 rushing touchdowns. Sayin doesn't have any. It has been for a lot of this year, though, the efficiency against the moments. Sayin has had he's got a better completion percentage. He's thrown more passes, so he's got more yards, but they have been almost dead even in yards per attempt, basically right around 9.5, basically the entire season. They are like separated by percentage points in CFB Stats quarterback rating. If you go to CFB Graphs, which is Parker Fleming's website, Stats of War on Twitter, Indiana is number 2 in the country in offensive success rate and dropbacks. Ohio State's number 1. It is the efficiency against the moments. And the argument for Sayin is he hasn't needed them. He's been so efficient and his team's been so good that he has not needed to lead a fourth quarter comeback. And we've talked about, at times Fernando Mendoza has been partially responsible for the need of those. On the other hand, the criticism of Sayin is that Mendoza's arguably played a slightly tougher schedule, certainly had tougher road games, and proven himself in those moments when a quarterback kind of has to shift up a gear. Sayin hasn't had to do that. And like one of the things I'm most excited about with this matchup, I think everybody is just getting to see these two quarterbacks in a setting where like neither one, this is a bad phrase because it's not like they've been trying, but neither one can hide from the matchup now because it does feel like this game is defined in large part by who plays better.
It's interesting. I just looked it up. we've talked a lot about Mendoza not being in the games for fourth quarters. And then the juxtaposition now with kind of hearing Ryan Day kind of talk about it and Kurt Signetti, how Ohio State's purposely, especially in the second half when they've had leads, like slow the game down, doing the same thing without taking them out of the game, but just basically shortening the game. They have played within one play of each other. Mendoza's played 357 plays.
I noticed this actually, yeah.
358. So a difference of one on offense, like offensive snaps. And so it's just interesting because they both gone about it different strategies, but their playing time's been the same. But yeah,
very similar, like fourth quarter numbers too. That you can tell that whenever possible, both coaches were just like
shutting it down.
Forget the stats, you're out of the game. Yeah.
And so, I mean, to our conversation, I don't know if it was last week or a couple weeks ago, why aren't these 4,000-yard passers? It's like, well, there's maybe your answer, right? And so we have somebody at the door, but we're going to have to just ignore that. And so, but I think part of what makes, I think, this matchup interesting with both quarterbacks is, and we'll get more into it, but just the defenses they're facing. Like if Ohio State keeps what it's doing on defense, like the statistics are like the best of any defense by far in the last decade, maybe farther than that. I just was going on CF3 stats. They just have the numbers through then. But I mean, like by a wide margin in scoring, total defense, passing defense, just incredibly impressive. Indiana is not very far off, not in maybe this historical category, but like, Ohio State's 1 and Ohio State's Indiana's like 3 or 4 in all of these categories. And so it's not just the quarterbacks facing off each other, but the idea that they're facing the best, not just 2 best defenses in the Big Ten, but 2 of the best defenses in the country by sort of a wide margin.
I think, and like I guess to transition to the other big piece of this, and I know you justifiably sort of laughed at me for saying I think that one of the defining characteristics of this game is these are the 2 best quarterbacks and the 2 best defenses these teams have seen. But I think that is the other matchup here. And what has struck me, and I wanted to ask Ryan Day about this. I couldn't get a second question in. It happens sometimes. But while we were on Days and he was talking about, I did ask Ryan Day about this. I wanted to ask Kurt Signetti about it. Excuse me.
Don't even remember which coach switch.
What's up?
They look a little different.
This week is bleeding together, man. There's a lot going on. I went back and looked through some of the snap counts, and like Aiden Fisher is something like 110 snaps under where he was a year ago. And I know he's missed a game, but nobody plays 110 snaps in a game. I found a couple of Ohio State players. I think Caleb Downs was one. Like everybody's snap counts on defense are down. And we've talked about how, I think Day talked about being able to rotate a little bit. We've talked about how Indiana doesn't rotate a ton, but both teams have been able to keep games so short. I think Indiana's maybe been a little bit better at this simply because they run the ball so well once they get to garbage time. But both teams have been able to keep games so short and moving so efficiently that like part of, I think, that defense, that defensive strength is like these are 2 defenses that are kept pretty fresh week to week. Not that there aren't injuries. Obviously, Indiana's lost a couple players, Kellen Wyatt for the season. Mikael Kamara's clearly been playing through something. But in the aggregate, these teams have been able to keep the snap counts really low.
Well, I think the way to say it is you're getting the best versions of both teams, right?
Yeah.
Both teams going in there. I mean, maybe the exception's Indiana's offensive line, but we don't know what the plan is. That was my follow-up question to Signetti. Didn't have time to ask him that about what their plan is. But outside of that, I mean, you're not missing Jeremiah Smith and Cardell Tate were kind of dealing with something. They came back for the Michigan game.
Do we think they were? Do we think they were dealing with something?
Maybe not.
Maybe something.
Elijah Surratt was dealing with something, and he was back. And Aiden Fisher obviously had injury earlier. But all those key name players are going to be in the game. So it's not like you're coming into this game with anybody at sort of significant excuse or disadvantage to sort of say, well, we were out X, Y, and Z. Indiana's offensive line might be the exception, but they, that's just what it, they were not deep there. I mean, they were deeper, but I mean, once you have 2 injuries, you can't. It's what it is. What it is. But they're not going to use that as an excuse. But I just think it's interesting that all the good players, the top line players, are going to be playing in this game, and that's what you want, right?
Yeah. Well, and it, does that bend toward Ohio State because maybe Indiana hasn't seen an offensive line as good as Ohio State's this season? Does it bend toward Indiana because if Indiana can run the ball even marginally effectively, then maybe Indiana can tire that Ohio State defense out at a level most teams haven't been able to? But I mean, it feels like a little bit like if I can just dumb it down to like 3 words, it's dominance versus disruptiveness, because Ohio State has just been smothering all year. Like there was a sequence that I saw somebody point out, I think on Twitter, kind of in real time, watching some bits and pieces of the Ohio State-Michigan game, where it was 2nd and 5, and there was like a holding call or something on Michigan, and Ryan Day declined to make it 2nd and 15. He left it at 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 4 or something like that.
Oh.
And the message there was basically, we don't think you can get
not
5.
what the analytics would call for.
Right. No, like that. That was very much we're bigger, we're stronger, we're tougher. You can't move us. So we're just gonna. If you
you hear his stat, I don't know if it was accurate, but he said their offensive line had 47 knockdowns too in that game.
Yeah,
that seems like 3 a play. That seems like a lot.
It does seem like a lot, but the point was that was kind of the mood of that game, and that has been the mood of a lot of Ohio State's games this season. Has just been you just don't. We don't think you can get first downs on us. Right. Indiana on the other side, obviously, Indiana has in its own way been smothering. It's not like a bend don't break defense or anything. But what has really marked out Indiana, you saw it against Oregon, you saw it against UCLA, you saw it against Purdue. So you've seen it against the best teams they've played. You've seen it against the worst teams they've played. Like Indiana plays in your backfield like nobody else in the country. Like they just they get upfield and they cause you all kinds of problems. They get the quarterback off his spot. They shut the run game down, and they make you play the kind of down and distance and game situation. And this will require, I think, Indiana to score some points on Ohio State too, but to make you play down distance and game situation the way they want it played rather than the way you want it played.
But the difference is, the flip side of that is Ohio State does not allow explosive plays. I think they allowed like 38
4 points for that.
But I'm saying like the teams. And that's been sort of one of Indiana's calling cards, right? Like even when their offense is struggling or the run game is struggling, they've been found ways to make those chunk plays to sort of kickstart things and get a drive going or put points on the board. And that's sort of what Ohio State sort of shut down. I can pull the numbers up here real quick. They've only allowed 78 plays of 10 yards or more. Indiana's allowed 101, and they've only allowed 23 plays of 20-plus yards, and Indiana's allowed 34. I mean, it's not huge difference in that second category, but it makes a difference, right? Like they're just not prone to making mistakes at all. And Indiana has made some on defense to sort of allow some of the, Indiana's allowed 9 plays of 40-plus yards. Ohio State's allowed 2. So, I mean, you kind of see that. And that's kind of where Indiana, they've limited them more lately, but that's sort of been the issue throughout the season when the defense has struggled.
Yeah, and if you want to look at like the advanced numbers on this real fast, like I'm looking at Parker's matchup, like, EPA margin nationally, Ohio State number 1, Indiana number 2. Offensive success rate nationally, Ohio State number 1, Indiana number 2. Defensive success rate nationally, Indiana number 5, Ohio State number 8. Net points per drive, Indiana number 1, Ohio State number 2. Like quality drive ratio, Indiana number 1, Ohio State number 3. Like there's, we can look at like I'm about to ask you a question that basically asks you to find the hole in all this, but the large numbers here. And this is why I think people have wanted this game so badly all year long. It's not just that these teams wound up number 1 and number 2. And, listen, sometimes that can happen because you play a certain schedule and because another conference beats up on itself and you just wind up with 2 undefeated teams and it's great. It is because people, and I know, with you and me, it's our job to like pick the holes in Indiana. We're 5 feet away. It's our job to really dig deep on the good and the bad and say, what's working, what's not. The same could be true for our counterparts over in Columbus. But from a 10,000-foot view, these are just the two best teams in the country. You can sit there and you can say to somebody, well, Fernando Mendoza had some shaky moments against Iowa, or he threw that pick six against Oregon. They'll say yes, but Indiana won 30-20 at Autzen Stadium. That's not supposed to happen. That you can say Ohio State hasn't really been tested, but then the flip side is you can also say yes, but they've only even won one of these games by one score. These are in so many ways the two best teams in the country. If we want to go player for player, it's hard to find five players at almost any position in this game in the country that are better than the ones that are going to be on the field Saturday. It is a fascinating game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the question then is what the difference is. Is that what you're asking, or what?
Yeah, I mean, basically, because I can pick out a couple, but I'm curious for your if there's something that doesn't show up, in the sort of statistical matchup, or something maybe you've seen in Indiana or Ohio State, and I think there are a couple of more obvious things here than others that you think we could look back on and say, I didn't expect that to define the game quite the way it did. What do you think that might be? X factors, basically.
Well, I mean, ironically, I think it comes down to basically what the last game Curt Cignetti said was going to come down to, and what Curt Cignetti said the Notre Dame game was going to come down to, and what the offseason was defined by, sort of by half, I guess. The offensive line and defensive line. Offensive line, like I said, that's the part where Indiana's not help. We don't know the state of things, but was not 100% at Purdue. Obviously, Drew Evans dressed but did not play. Had a brace on his ankle of some sort. Benson was sort of weird. Did not start, but then did not start the second half. Right? It was sort of came in almost in garbage time.
Yeah, he was with the second team essentially,
and he had been banged up, and so I'm not sure if he was banged up why he would play at all and why he would play with the second team offense. And then his backup was backing up at guard, and now he's back at tackle. So, what does that all look like, and can they hold up? Because when this team has struggled, and I said it, when the Penn State game, before the Penn State game, I said when Mendoza struggled, the offensive line has struggled, and that's sort of where Indiana has failed. Whenever Indiana has struggled, that's where it's been at, right? Because it speeds him up, and then even when he's not getting pressure, he starts making mistakes. And so can Indiana's offensive line hold up? And then defensive line, the reason why it's important is because they disappeared, particularly in the Ohio State game. I thought they were a little better, especially in the second half of the Notre Dame game, but they allowed a lot of scrambling, didn't get to the quarterback, didn't contain him. But they're not facing the rushing quarterback this time. But I think, like Curt Cignetti said, they have to be as dominant as it has to be a performance equaling what they did against Oregon. Is basically what he said probably what it takes to win, right? To be disruptive on a drive by, maybe not play by play basis, but drive by drive, you're making one or two plays where you're disruptive. Like Dante Moore was feeling pressure even when he wasn't under pressure. And can they do that against Ohio State? And I think those are the two keys. It's what the keys were last year, basically, and they failed in both. This year I don't think special teams will be a problem. Just because I think what the quiet story is their special teams have been literally perfect all season. Almost I can't think of a mistake that maybe a penalty or two, but I just don't see that being part of a game. And then that's what I think the key is. Those two things.
How do you feel when Coach calls you Niz? That's a question we got here on the.
I'll be honest. I did not think he knew my name. Still.
I've
had one-on-one interviews, and so, but I mean, he's just Kurt's very focused, and so I don't know if names are his thing or not, but yeah, he knew it.
The other one I would throw out there is Ohio State running the football, and somebody brought up Andrew Jones, presumably not the former Braves player. Then he should be in the Hall of Fame, and I hope he knows that.
Doesn't Andrew spell his name differently?
Yeah, he spells his name differently. He says IU running game 14th in the country, Ohio State 97th. The one thing I would say is Ohio State's still top 5, top 6 in the conference in explosive plays, in yards per carry. And if we're going to talk about
where Indiana's stats were padded from the non-conference schedule, it wasn't Mendoza's, it was the run game.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, that's true.
But I would also point out, and I know advanced stats in football aren't everybody's cup of tea, but I do think it's relevant to point out Ohio State is still 8th nationally in offensive success rate rushing the football. Success rate is basically just like it's staggered by down, but it's like, did you get – this is a very layman's way of explaining it. Did you get enough yards to stay ahead of the sticks or get the yards you needed, obviously, to get a first down when you ran whatever play you ran? So it's like
well, it's
like,
worth saying that
it's like 4 yards on first down, 5 yards on second down, getting a first down on third down, something like that. The point is, when Ohio State has not rushed the football at the level that maybe we've expected at times when they've had those stud running backs Dobbins.
It's worth saying they're starting a freshman, and his name is
Bo Jackson.
His name is Bo Jackson, but they're starting a freshman, and he's been pretty good the last 5 weeks. 4 of the last 5 games he's rushed for 100 yards, and so this is the stretch that freshman, he hasn't hit a wall. He's kind of learned and matured, and so he's trending upwards, and so I think they're very happy about the trajectory of their run game. But to your point, it just kind of fuels the idea they were successful really all season, and now they're sort of they've got a kid that's got some experience under his belt.
Yeah, I guess the point I was trying to make is when they have needed to, they've run the ball well. I think some of the raw rushing game numbers have been more reflective of just the way they have chosen to go about moving the ball and scoring the ball. And I think a little bit of it is that, no, I don't think they necessarily have, a J.K. Dobbins and Ezekiel Elliott, a Trevion Henderson, style, this guy will be in the NFL in 4 months running back, although I might be proven wrong. Obviously Jackson can't be because he's only a freshman.
It'd be amazing if he's in the NFL in 4 months.
His name is Bo Jackson. He might be in.
He signs up as Bo Jackson and they let him in.
Could be playing for the Royals in 4 months. It might be the actual Bo Jackson. I have not seen him with his helmet off. But, what I would say is they are running the ball the way they need to when they need to. And so I think that's another area where, again, if you're Indiana, going back to what has made Indiana successful, and Indiana is – first in the Big Ten this season. They have 103 tackles for loss. The next closest team has 84. Indiana as a team has 34 sacks. The only team with more is Minnesota. I think that number should have been higher, but Ryan Brown somehow turned into Donovan McNabb for most of that Purdue game. So
that one play he made was insane. That one where he did 3 spin moves.
Yeah, and then he threw the ball 5 yards short. I mean, it was just it was like he used all of his energy just getting away from the pass touch.
In the background. Yeah.
But and listen, maybe there's a conversation to be had about Indiana's pass rush needing to get home. But the point is, what has made Indiana so good defensively this season is that they have been able to get offenses into the situations Indiana wants them to play, into the down, the distance, and as we've talked about, the scoreboard state, where Indiana can force them to do stuff they may not be comfortable with or stuff they may not want to do. And I think
maybe that's another key too, that now that you bring that up, don't poop the bed in the first half and go down by 2 scores or allow a 98-yard touchdown right at the start. They've made some in both of those games, they made serious errors.
We're talking about last year, to be clear.
Yeah,
we're talking about Ohio State and
Notre Dame. And they just got out of as a group. I think even Kurt Cignetti kind of got out of his wheelhouse in terms of how to call that game. Brian Haynes admitted it after the Notre Dame game. You've said that they've regularly dictated the terms of how the games are played. And then last year when they got flipped, but against good teams, it's really hard to sort of work your way back. And especially in the Ohio State game, giving up essentially 14 points on special teams is a non-starter. If they avoid that, because that game was a game. I think you mentioned this a couple of days ago when we were talking about Sunday, that it was 7-7
when they fumbled the punt.
End of the second quarter.
If that punt goes off cleanly, There's every
You don't
chance
know
in
what the game
77
is.
at
And it
halftime.
doesn't go well. If it gets off cleanly, it doesn't go right to Downs again, and then he returns that one for a touchdown.
I'm not sure he was on the field for that one because I'm not sure Downs was returning all their punts that day.
All
But
their
yeah,
punts that day, yeah.
one way or the other, the point is like
Right.
Indiana was on track. It felt like Indiana was holding on undeniably. Like in
Right.
the stadium, it felt like Indiana was holding
Even
on.
though
To
they were
cliff.
struggling on offense, even
But
though
it was only 7-7. Indiana
Yeah.
was on pace to go into halftime tied at the Horseshoe, and then they make one special teams mistake. They compound it with another, and at that point, yes, suddenly Indiana has to play a completely different game because they're 2 scores behind, and they are trying to catch up in a way that they're probably not designed.
And it wasn't as quick bang bang in the Notre Dame game, but that 98-yard touchdown, and the offense couldn't find a rhythm. And it was the same sort of thing. They just were not playing their style. They couldn't get everything to click, and that lasted almost basically 3.5 quarters. And so like if this game, I think not just the first drive, but like finding that rhythm, I think will be important, and just sticking to what they've done. Because like I said, I felt like the coaches didn't even like the way they were calling the game felt different. I mean, both those situations, obviously it was different because they were down, but it was kind of sloppy. But like to avoid that, and a neutral field, I think will help. Not on the road, so maybe that plays into it. But I think that's probably, and that's more sort of it's a hard thing to measure. But just the idea of you're not giving them free points, you're not making those mistakes, and you're playing your brand that got you to this game, which they just weren't able to last year.
Who, to your mind?
Okay, before we go, you've been asking me. I have some questions for you.
All right. Well, let me fire one more off to you, and it can be quick. Who is the most important player in this matchup in your mind? Who is the single most important player?
Most important player?
Yeah. Like if I tell you they play something approximating their best game on Saturday, their team wins.
I'm gonna go sort of off the board one here.
I am too, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say first.
I'm gonna say Stephen Daly.
Okay, I like that one. Yeah,
I think he's been sort of a game
right, Reggie White. Like it turns out,
he's been. I mean, we could pull up the PFF numbers, but like he's been sort of ridiculous. He had 4 tackles for loss against Purdue and a forced fumble. And he's been sort of, as we've talked about, kind of his pressure numbers, according to PFF, have been a little lower last week. But from the Michigan State game to the Maryland game, he had 6 or more each of those weeks. He's been dominant against the run in the last couple of weeks. Like you said, when we talked about, they need sort of a game changer. And I think Kamara's sort of like, we don't know who can do that, and he's sort of been that guy the last 6 weeks. And I think they just need somebody to, because you can't. It's hard for to say like a cornerback takes a game over, because like they could just ignore D'Angelo Pons the entire thing and never go.
Well, here's the thing. I was going to say Pons, and the reason why is because I back Indiana to get at least some pressure on Sand. Maybe they won't get as much as they did like in against some of the bad teams they've played this season. But I back them to get more pressure on him than what he normally sees. He's still a young quarterback. He's not seen a ton of pressure this year. And I back Indiana to make him uncomfortable. The key for me, if I'm Indiana, is I need to be able to take away one of the 2 wide receivers in single coverage. And maybe it's Smith, maybe it's Tate. It doesn't matter to me. But I need to be able to say to D'Angelo Pons today, whoever you are on,
see, that's hard. Well, I mean, you're
Indiana does a lot of this where they will play. Well, no, Indiana does a lot of this where they will play basically. They will play zone coverage across the board, except D'Angelo Pons will play man to man. Like
right,
Pons
side
will
of the field. It's side of the field. He doesn't.
Sure, and that's my point. I only need him to take away one. I don't need him to take away specifically Smith or specifically Tate, because color me among those that believes that those guys, okay, I'm sure they're banged up. Everybody's banged up, but that there was a little bit of gamesmanship and, hey, we're going to rest you and kind of get you ready for the postseason in them sitting out those couple games near the end of the season. If I'm Bryant Haynes, I just need D'Angelo Pons to be able to cover one of them largely by himself so that I can throw all the confusing sort of versatile, like, what are the phrases we love to use? Multiple, well-disguised zone looks.
Disguises?
It's
did they handle the disguise as well?
Literal disguises.
Dan Lanning's triggered somewhere.
I back Indiana to get pressure on Sayan. And I back Haynes to throw coverage looks at him in those moments.
But I mean, that's a big
mistakes, but I need one of those two guys off the board in man coverage. That's why I was
to just assume they're going to pressure him.
Maybe not as, like I said, maybe not as much as they have in some other games, but more I would expect than he has seen for a lot of this season. And if he plays through it, fair enough. And by the way, us doing this is virtually guaranteed that one of the quarterbacks is going to throw for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. And we're going to look
he's only been I pull it up. Sayan's only been pressured 82 times this year. And only 3 double digits only in 3 games. It was the stretch between Wisconsin, Penn State, and Purdue. Purdue actually.
Purdue did get to him a little bit.
Got to him, 10 times. I'm going to look up Mendoza, see what his numbers were. So, I mean, yes, obviously they've done a very nice job keeping him upright, but that's my point. It's like, I don't know how Mendoza's been pressured 96 times, and then that Penn State game was sort of the crazy one where it was 3 double digits in 3 games, 18 times against Penn State was the season high.
Okay. Like I said, the two of us picking a non-quarterback guarantees the quarterback's going to be the MVP of this game.
No, I mean, sure. I just think that if those are equal, somebody else's has to step up because I don't think both quarterbacks are going to play terrible or either was going to play terrible. I don't know. That just doesn't seem likely. But given the defensive profiles of these teams, I have a couple questions. Do you think? And I'll explain. So 300 yards of total offense. Ohio State's allowed it once this season. Indiana's only allowed a team, three teams get over 300. Do you think either of the teams on Saturday allow over 300 yards of total offense?
Yes.
Okay.
I think both do. I think maybe under 350, but over 300. And the reason why is because, again, if we're talking about where these matchups are, I think these two teams probably have the best group of skill players either one has seen this season, at least where they were within their offense.
The flip side is true either, right? This is the best secondary each has seen. These are the best linebackers. It's like it's hard to say. All right, so
I think more than 300, under 350 for both.
Points wise, does a team at 30 points? Probably not, but that's my question. But so to set that up, do you know how the high? How many points the most of points Ohio State has given up this season? Do you know off the top of your head? Can you guess?
It's either like 16 or 17.
That's 16. Indiana's only given up 24 points. That was their most. They've allowed multiple touchdowns in 3 games. Ohio State's only allowed 2 touchdowns in 2 games. Do you think either team gets to 30 points?
I'm not even sure either team gets to 25 points. So no.
Well, they're going to get 325 yards of offense and not in what? Scored 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. I mean, just got to make it work, right?
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Wilson used to say that like a really good offense gets a point for every 10 yards of offense, but I think that these two defenses even allow
a 35-30 game, and I just don't see that. I mean, maybe
but what I was about to say is even allowing for the idea that I think both these teams will find the way to move the ball on each other a little bit. I think they will find ways to ultimately, in this matchup specifically, bend but not break. There will be some forcing of field goals. There will be a couple 4th down stops, like that kind of thing. I think, like, I would lean toward like a 24-21, 26-24. Like, I think Bill Connolly had this at 25-24 or 26-25 Indiana. Parker Fleming's got it, and these are obviously computer projections. Parker Fleming's got to get 28-22 Ohio State. If you told me right now either team breaks 30, I would take that team to win. Like if you said,
I know, absolutely.
One of these teams breaks 30. I think that team
breaks. Yeah. All right, next one. 200-yard passer. Ohio State's allowed 1. Do you know who that was?
Was it Arch Manning?
No, it was Luke Altmaier.
Okay.
And then Indiana's allowed 4. And that's this is the Heisman question, right? Does either quarterback get over 200 yards?
I think yes, because I think Ohio State moves the ball through Sayan. Again, going back to the discussion of the run game, Ohio State moves the ball through Sayan, and I think Indiana may hit a couple points in this game where they just have to throw the ball, like where they just like where the run game's just not working, and even if maybe Mendoza winds up at 38, 40 attempts, which would be a season high for him. I think his season high right now is 37 in a single game. I think the Michigan State game, if I'm not mistaken, was his season high. I could see a world where he just has to air the ball out more, because whether Ohio State's making Indiana chase on the scoreboard or simply that is just the way that Indiana has to move the football, I think Indiana is like if Indiana breaks that 300-yard number and Mendoza only throws it like 25 times, then what you're telling me is Indiana ran the ball really well. And again, then I would say I think Indiana wins the game. But I will say, too, I have noticed, and I don't know if you have, we talked about a lot at the beginning of the season, Indiana had gone away from all that screen stuff that it ran last year with its slot receivers. There's been more of that lately. I don't know if you've noticed, but like not a ton, but like just enough to make me think that they are working on it in games enough to go to it as and when they need it.
Or Carter Smith in the slot.
I was a big fan of that one. Carter Smith just hanging out here. I love how not only did he go to the slot, he dropped back.
And yeah, like they're going to throw it to him.
He's like, the screen is for me.
Yeah,
so maybe that's what they're going for. I don't know.
Worse, not great. All right, but maybe they're setting something up for this game. Turnovers. Now, this is an interesting area, because one thing that Ohio State hasn't done, and maybe it's because they just haven't needed to or seen enough plays. Turnovers is a big area of difference in terms of forcing them. Indiana has forced 24. Ohio State's only forced 13. Neither team turns the ball over, right? Indiana has 7 turnovers on the season, and Ohio State has 8. They've only had multiple turnovers in one game each. Do you think either team turns the ball over more than once?
By the way, I looked at the national numbers real fast on turnover margin. UConn's turned the ball over one time all year.
That's crazy.
Can you imagine getting through a season and imagine being whoever it was a lost fumble or no, I'm sorry. They've turned it over twice all year. They have one lost fumble and one interception. Imagine being like the guy that lost the fumble. Like no one else on the team has fumbled the ball. I think,
well, they could have fumbled it and then recovered it.
I think yes. And the reason why is because we've certainly seen Fernando Mendoza at times, as you've talked about, being able to get just a little bit rattled. It's not hard for me to imagine him throwing a pick, and then all you need is one other turnover in Ohio, and Indiana's turned it over twice. And I said earlier that I think Indiana's going to be able to throw some stuff at Julian saying that he has not seen so far this season. So I can't really say that, and then in good conscience say I don't think it's possible that I'm not necessarily predicting it, but that I don't think it's possible Ohio State could turn the ball over twice in the game. So I think.
So you think either team's capable of turning it over twice, so you're betting on one of them doing it?
Yes. Candace says 5 Ohio State turnovers. That would be a remarkable number.
That would be a win. But you mentioned your one fumble. Indiana only has one lost fumble this season, and I think it was Mendoza, or was it? No, it was Lee Beebe.
It was Lee Beebe, right at the beginning of the year.
Lee Beebe in the opener. Those are my questions. I think I'm fascinated. I know the quarterback matchup is obviously going to carry the headlines, and as it should. I mean, they're Heisman candidates. But defensively, I think is where this thing's going. I just think it's.
I would throw one other matchup at you.
Yeah,
and this bends to what you're saying. Bryant Haynes against Brian Hartline.
Yeah,
and I know, like it's right. I mean, the offenses are the head coach's offenses. That Kurt Cignetti will tell you it's his offense. Obviously, Mike Shanahan calls plays. But it's Kurt Cignetti's offense. The same is true for Ryan Day. It's Ryan Day's offense, and at different times in his Ohio State tenure, he has called plays. But unless I am mistaken, Brian Hartline is calling plays this season for Ohio State. And of course, so far it's like it's working. So far it's working perfectly fine. But that's one more where if you're asking me for the coordinator matchups, I think Ohio State's got the advantage of Matt Patricia. Though Matt Patricia ultimately is going up against Kurt Cignetti and a guy who's been calling his offense long enough that the two of them are – no, but my point is more Mike Shanahan's been calling the Kurt Cignetti, Mike Shanahan offense for what, like 4 or 5 years now?
Well, you said Matt Patricia has the advantage, though.
Well, I think he has a slight advantage. I mean, he's the Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator. Look what they've done this year.
Did you Google Kurt Cignetti?
But I think the bigger advantage is Bryant Haynes in Indiana against Brian Hartline.
I would love you to preference a question of Kurt Cignetti with you think Matt Patricia has the advantage over your offensive system and play caller and see what the answer is.
Maybe after the game, we'll ask him.
I thought Matt Patricia had a huge advantage against you.
You did for 500 yards.
that would lead to an interesting exchange. I'll get that is true for sure. No, the play call.
I think it was just. I think
what
it
I
was
said
just,
about Haynes in the Notre Dame game that he did not. He said admitted that he did not call the game like he felt he needed to. And so, to your point, regardless of who's on the other side, that he needs, him and Mike Shanahan and Kurt Cignetti to walk off the field feeling good about what they called. And I don't think they did that in either the Ohio State game last year or the Notre Dame game last year.
I think that is the one thing that, by the way, Caleb Boggs asked, we talked about this just a minute ago, will Pons be on Smith one-on-one? I think it will be much more, as you said, about Pons on one side of the field. Yeah. But I think he will be one-on-one against whoever he lines up across from a lot of the time. Maybe not all the time, but he is the one player that will be – he will be the one playing a lot more man coverage, whether it's Smith, Tate, Ennis, whoever is there. And maybe part of the chess match is Ohio State trying to get those guys away from Pons, but Pons will be one-on-one against whoever he faces. I lost my train of thought because I was answering what Caleb
said. So we got like 15 minutes left.
15? Whoa.
That's what we got.
I was about to wrap it up, but we can go a little longer if you've got more to.
Well, I think we should. I think before, because tonight's the penultimate college football rankings. I know everybody's going to be tuning in. It shifts every week. You never know what's going to be on the TV schedule.
Maybe we'll get another 6-7 this week. Who knows?
What's your preferred matchup? Do you have a so like here, and we could go over the playoff scenarios and maybe get your prediction on this. Because I don't know if we're going to podcast later in the week or not. But here's what I think. Because I think there's like if Georgia and Texas Tech were to both lose, I think the loser of the Big Ten game is still the second seed. Like they'll be 1 and 2. Like
yeah, I think so.
And so I like there's.
And I don't think like you. I don't think it's possible for them to fall out of the top.
I don't think that's possible to fall out. I think they're going to be the number 3 seed, or the loser will be the number 3 seed. I predicted earlier this week. I think Indiana's the 3. I think they lose a close game to Ohio State. I think they go to the Cotton Bowl, and that's where I see this going. Preferred matchup. There's going to be a lot of movement in the seedings tonight. I think it'll be interesting, specifically what they do with Ole Miss, because I think they're going to view that as sort of like an injury to a player, essentially, and I think they will move down a couple of slots. And obviously, conference championship weekend will move some things around. But do you have a preferred matchup, and what's your sort of prediction for their seed? And I mean, I guess that's kind of game prediction in itself. But like, what do you see happening? What's your prediction? And then, do you have a preferred opponent for the college football playoff in the quarterfinals?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they'll stay 1-2 tonight. I agree with you that they will not fall past 4 because I don't think the committee would put Alabama ahead of them even with a win in Atlanta.
And the best thing for Indiana is the team that's almost right behind them now. If all that stuff happens, is going to be Oregon. Because like I said,
and at this point, they would not be playing. I don't think Ole Miss can jump them either. Not that I thought Ole Miss could jump them before, but like I don't think the committee is gonna be in any mood to move Ole Miss into the top 4.
Well, like I said, I think Ole Miss is gonna go down 2 or 3 spots.
Yeah,
that's
I think. Okay, so I think obviously if they're the 1, they're in the Rose Bowl. If they're the 3, they're in the Cotton Bowl. If they're in the 4. They're the 4. I mean, they're mighty.
If they're 2, but I think ironically, they're 2. If they're 2 or 3, they're in the Cotton Bowl, no matter what. It's just a matter of seeding.
Yes, correct. Because it's a distance.
Yeah, right. So,
and if they're the 4, in theory, they could still be there, just depending upon
which team gets in.
Who jumped them. But I think it would be unlikely because I think that the team that if they wound up at 4, the team most likely to jump them would be Texas Tech.
Most of the teams are going to be in the closest to the same bowl, and so they
right, yeah. Someone here says if either team gets smacked, they're not in the top 4. I disagree with that simply because of what's happened behind them.
There's no way.
I think Matthew is an Ohio State fan who's joined us, and thank you for joining us, Matthew. Genuinely, it's been nice.
Because if they lost by 70, the team that would jump them would be Oregon, and they beat Oregon, so it's just not.
They beat Oregon at Oregon, like it's just
not going to happen.
You just can't justify that. I think if they're the 3, what would they get? The 6-11 at that point.
7-10.
7-10. Okay. I could see a world where that winds up being Notre Dame.
Or no, number 3 gets 6-11. Sorry, I'm
Okay,
thinking
that's
about
what I thought. Okay. I could still maybe see that. I guess maybe what makes the most sense to me might potentially be. Yeah, I mean, it's just so hard to know what they're going to do with Ole Miss because, like, Ole Miss, I think was the 6th, right, last week, and like you would like Ole Miss.
Ole Miss was 7 last week.
Ole Miss was 7 last week. Who was 6 then? BYU? No,
6 was Oregon.
Oh, 6 was Oregon. 5 was Texas Tech, and then all right. So if they do with A&M what the voters did, A&M's going to fall a ways.
I don't think. I think the A&M's going to be below all those teams essentially. Maybe not Ole Miss because of the coaching change, but they'll be below Oregon.
And you could be in a situation where you wind up against A&M. You could be in a situation where A&M winds up once the shuffling is all done and some other teams move around.
My prediction in the story I did was that A&M and Alabama play, and Alabama beats them.
Would that be the 8-9?
What do you mean? No, that would be the 6-11. Like Texas A&M goes to 6, and then Alabama's the 11 because they lose the SEC title game.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think what give me
because they're the team behind them is Vanderbilt, but they beat Vanderbilt. So I just don't see the committee dropping Alabama out of all teams out of the playoffs for losing the SEC title game.
No, I don't think so. Again, I think it'd be one where they'd really like that. That is one to Matthew's point where like they'd really have to get beat up in that game. Like they'd have to lose by a lot.
Yeah, that would probably be the exception.
Give me like A&M or Oregon against the field in that situation. Because the other thing about Notre Dame is there is this cryptic post I sent you yesterday going around from Jeremiah Love, who I guess got hurt against Stanford. I tried to stay up and watch that game and just couldn't. I guess he got hurt against Stanford, and then he posted something on Instagram this week that said, like, it's been a blessing, Notre Dame. Yeah. And I don't think there's really been an explanation. Like, is he out, or is that
can it be just he said he finished his regular season? And
yeah, but like if you compose a post like that, you know how people are going to react.
As a reporter, you know better than to try to read a Twitter post.
Well, hold on, it was an Instagram post. I mean, let's respect the sanctity of the gram.
That changes, but no, okay. But what's your preferred in your heart? This is you've not covered big time bowl game, with Indiana in it, obviously. Like, do you have a preferred? Who would you like to see them play? Is it in your like a preferred opponent beyond your guess?
It doesn't matter preferred opponent. I told you what I
best matchup. What do you think would be
the Cotton Bowl? So that we can go to Billy Bob's, which in Fort Worth, which is the most famous honky tonk in the entire world. Everyone who's anyone has played Billy Bob's at some point.
That was really the most because we talk about Landman a lot. So I assume that was Billy Bob Thornton's restaurant of some sort. And it has no connection to Billy Thornton.
I'm almost certain Billy Bob's was featured in an episode of Yellowstone, though. So there's Taylor Sheridan tie-ins.
It's not even nearly the same thing. But
you have real life Landman.
What do you think would be the best matchup in that spot?
I think they would do well against Texas A&M because I think they give Marcel Reed some trouble, and because frankly, Texas A&M, like you don't want to overreact, but like this, no sample size is that big in a college football season. Like A&M ultimately looked pretty second best against Texas, and that was right after A&M really flirted with self-destruction against South Carolina. So I think personally, like if you're, I mean, other than Ole Miss and the whole idea of like they don't have a head, like it's a brand new head coach.
You're assuming chalk all the way. I'm just saying, like, what would be like if you wanted to see them against one team that they could feasibly face, obviously, like probably wouldn't face Ohio State in a rematch in the quarterfinals. Like in the quarterfinals, what team would you want to see them play?
Ohio State or Ohio State.
Texas A&M this Saturday.
Texas A&M. I would like to see them against Texas A&M.
Interesting. I think a Notre Dame rematch. And I think that'd have to be the number 2 to kind of make that all work. Would be all the ultimate sort of redemption arc, right? Like if you beat Ohio State, Notre Dame, maybe Ohio State again, like you get every chance to sort of exercise your demons. Like, Georgia would be fun. I don't think they'd fall enough to, that would, I think, have to, because I think they're going to win the SEC title game. And so it'd be hard to sort of see them probably down the line. But those are sort of probably the two teams I'd be interested to see them match up against.
Obviously, I mean, I think there's a class of Indiana fan that would like to see them play an SEC team and kind of make a point in that sort of matchup,
But wouldn't Notre Dame be in that sort of same?
No, because I think the SEC became Indiana's enemy this offseason. Like, I understand why, like, we frame it through the games they lost, but like the narrative that Indiana pushed back against the whole offseason, and really until they beat Oregon, frankly, was that Indiana was a fraud, that if they played an SEC schedule, they would have gone 7-5, that none of this was real. And if Indiana played Alabama, if Indiana played, I mean, even to a certain extent, a wounded Ole Miss team and beat them, then there would be sort of a you don't get
Ole Miss, I think, would be the exception because people would just say, well, they didn't have their coach. I think you have to avoid, if you're going to beat an SEC team,
then you would see an army of Twitter users posting that wonderful meme, another hypothetical, the SpongeBob dunking meme that says another hypothetical win for the SEC. Like, you would get that just times 10,000, which, as someone who is so deeply disappointed with what the SEC of my youth has become, would enjoy that tremendously. All right.
We got 5 minutes.
No, we're going to use it for final thoughts and predictions. Do you have any final thoughts? And if you are willing to throw one out there, what is your prediction?
I am going to predict Ohio State, and I'm going to go like a low scoring. Like, I think it's going to be like 21-17. I think the defenses rule the day. So, of course, it's going to be like last year's game where it's just all points. But I think that if they were to play in a rematch, I might flip-flop my scores there. But that's what I think. And I think that Indiana has, like I said, a real chance of just remaining. And if that's the score, and it's like the teams are just clearly very impressive, I think they have a real chance of even just maintaining the 2 seed.
Yeah, I agree with that. My final thought on this game is that there is an extent to which Indiana has already won because Indiana is at the, I mean, like, we say this a lot, like, look at Indiana was number 1 in the S&P Plus.
Moral victory? Are you going moral
victory? Can you let me finish one sentence?
Moral victory?
Podcasting for more than an hour. One time, I would like to be able to finish a thought.
You said a lot of
microphone.
You said a lot of thoughts.
Door.
We said a lot of thoughts.
Like, the game that everyone has waited for all year involves Indiana football. And that is something that is culturally important at a level that I don't, you have asked me a lot about, for my perspective on, like, where does this rank? What does this mean? Like, it is actually genuinely true that the college football universe revolves around Indiana and Ohio State this weekend. Not just because that's a fun game or people want to see it on, or it's going to be Saturday night or whatever, but because people have recognized these two programs as the two best in the country, and they have waited all year for this game. It will be in prime time. It will be in a dome, so there won't be any weather weirdness. We will just get like just a straight up. And again, to go back to what I said earlier and what we've kind of talked about at different times here, I understand Indiana would want to win. I think the Rose Bowl probably would mean more for Indiana than Ohio State. Ohio State literally won it last year. But there's not that much for Indiana to lose because in all likelihood, they get the bye anyway. So, like, you're not even, like last year when Indiana went to Ohio State, we walked out thinking, boy, are they still in the playoff? No, there's none of that now. Like, the absolute worst case, everything melted down. This was the worst thing that could have happened to us tonight. Still ends with Indiana probably in the top 4, and if not, then hosting a first-round game in Bloomington, which is just something that, like, is unbelievable to say in year 2 of a coach's head coaching tenure, much less given what they've already done between year 1 and year 2. My prediction is Ohio State 24, Indiana 19. I think Ohio State gets Indiana off schedule enough to have to kick a couple field goals, and I think maybe we get to a point late in the game. Indiana's got 19, or Indiana's got 13. They score, they go for 2, they don't get it. That winds up being the final score. I think Ohio State 24, Indiana 19.
Very detailed prediction, but I think we both think it's going to be a game to the fourth quarter, basically.
Yes,
down to it, right? I
mean, and I think there will, and I suspect there will be moments in where both sides feel really in peril. I think that's as much as anything the difference between the Ohio State game last year and this year's. I think there will be moments when Ohio State looks genuinely in trouble, or sort of like Mendoza has a great drive, or Sayin throws a couple picks and doesn't complete a pass for like 10 game minutes or something like that, and Ohio State has to sort of go look inside itself and say, we got to pull it together at a level that we haven't all year. So Indiana 19, Ohio State 24. Last thoughts?
Does that mean Sayin gets the Heisman?
Diego Pavia is coming up on the rail, isn't he? And I mean, we don't need to unpack that too much.
I don't know, because I thought Love was the guy, and getting hurt sort of just killed.
Now it feels like he's faded.
And
Do you want me to check the odds really quickly?
It's going to switch. I think it's going to be as up in the air of a Heisman if it's that close of a game, and Sayin wins. I think if Mendoza wins, like, it'll just be easy. But I do think Mendoza.
I think Mendoza, I think, has the clearer path to, I had a great game, I win the Heisman Trophy.
I don't even think he has, like, if they win and he has an okay game, I think he wins it just because he had the moments this year. He had the momentum.
That's fair.
Well, I think Sayin's overcoming a lot. And so if he wins and he doesn't play great, but neither does Mendoza, I think it's going to be like a really close vote. We won't know. Like, it's not going to be a clear, it'll be a very tough. It'll be interesting, and either could win.
Here you go. Here's that MGM again, not encouraging anyone to gamble, but these are the odds we are asked to use when we talk about odds.
Sure.
Julian Sayin, favorite, plus 150.
Oh, he moved up to
Pavia, plus 170. Fernando Mendoza, plus 175.
Wow, that's interesting. I don't think Pavia has a chance. He's not playing this weekend, too.
I think that's the difficulty with Pavia, is one of these guys is going to get one more stage. One of these guys is going to be holding up the Big Ten championship trophy at 12:05 a.m. on Sunday morning. And Pavia is maybe the most electric quarterback in the country. I won't argue with that. He's had some insane games. He's been more turnover prone. I think it's fair to ask who he's beaten compared to who these two have beaten. Mendoza certainly already, and Sayin in particular, if he beats Indiana in this game. I think, and by the way, Jeremiah Love was like plus 2,500 or something. Like he's out. He had clear three. It was clearly those three. And I think it ultimately, I guess, put it this way. You said, does the winner of this game win the Heisman? I think yes, because of what you said, which is that one of these guys is going to get that stage. So
yeah, no, but I just think I think there could be an upset in the world where Ohio State wins a close game and neither of them play, neither of us 300-yard game. It could go either way because you just don't know how people are going to vote. And like I said, Mendoza did the moments Mendoza had gave him momentum that Sayin never really had, other than outside, like he was consistently at the top, but never sort of rose above until now, just because Mendoza had kind of a game against Purdue.
Yeah. We're not going to discuss signing day. Just to be honest, Indiana's not doing anything for it. It's not like it's not important. They're signing what is very likely to be the highest rated class in program history, certainly the highest rated class of Curt Cignetti's career. But again,
wasn't Tom Allen 25? And
I think that class, maybe you're right, but I thought that class faded into
22,
the 30s.
Because that was our last top 30 class. I thought it was 25.
Okay, well, either way, it's certainly up there. It's certainly one of the very few top 30 classes they've ever had. Hoop, we're not talking about volleyball. I'm sorry. Steve Ayer's done a wonderful job this season. 3 players, first team All Big Ten. They're hosting for the first time. We will be covering those games. By the way, Indy Star Herald Times will be at those games, be at those matches this week in Bloomington. But there is just one thing eating up all the oxygen. It's the reason, frankly, why Indiana's not doing anything for signing day, which is there's a Big Ten championship to be won. And you and I both, I think, were out ahead of the field in our bullishness around this team in the preseason, and even we did not see this coming. So it's going to be a fun weekend. Louisville at 2, Ohio State at 8. He'll be there. We'll see if I pick him up. But if I do, Mike will be there. I'll be there. Gainbridge Fieldhouse and then Lucas Oil Stadium. We'll have all the usuals and even more than that. But for now, for the Indianapolis Star, for the Bloomington Herald Times, I'm Zach Osterman. He's Mike Niziolek. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you soon.